Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's Modern Workplace webinar with Vista Maria. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started. We would love to answer any and all of your questions, so please ask them in the Q&A panel. Also, if you are having any technical difficulties, feel free to put those in the Q&A panel and we will be sure to help you as soon as possible. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our presenter today. We have with us Katrina Wright. She is the Senior Manager of Information Technology over at Vista Maria. Give everybody a quick hi. Welcome, Katrina. We appreciate you being here. In Katrina's role over at Vista Maria, she is responsible for the strategic direction, project management, software configuration, business intelligence, help desk management, and maintaining vendor relationships. Whew. In addition to that, Katrina also donates her time to Vista Maria as the leader of the Green Group, which aims to reduce the agency's carbon footprint. She is a member of the Christmas Committee, which ensures all of the residents have a magical holiday. And she serves as a current member and former chair of the annual Dolly Drive event to benefit foster care youth. And so Katrina is very busy over at Vista Maria. And for those of you who don't know about Vista Maria, I would love to give you a little information because Vista Maria is a wonderful organization in our area here in Metro Detroit. So in 1883, 5 Sisters of the Good Shepherd arrived in downtown Detroit to the Ward Mansion on Fort Street to establish their first home and carry out the mission of fostering restorative relationships and delivering innovative care, treatment, and education so that vulnerable youth and families, treatment and education so that vulnerable, say that 3 times fast, youth and families believe in their worth, heal, and build the skills for success. The need was great and the group quickly grew to 33 sisters and over 200 girls and young women. Through the generosity of the Ford family, the sisters were deeded 50 acres of land on West Warren Avenue in Dearborn Heights. They immediately began taking steps to build residence halls, a school, a powerhouse, and an auditorium and gymnasium. On December 8th, 1942, the House of the Good Shepherd officially reopened with the new name, Vista Maria. Over the years, Vista Maria has evolved to serve a variety of needs for vulnerable youth. Today, Vista Maria is recognized as providing best-in-class residential and community-based treatments and therapy for children, young women, and their families with the vision of all children, families, and communities achieve success through continuous learning and relationships that promote personal, professional, and family well-being. Vista Maria looks to its future as a healing resource center, which will ensure that children and families within our communities have access to critical services and care. Now, with that said, yesterday was Giving Tuesday, and you might have seen on our social media channels, we had a little campaign going for our friends over at Vista Maria. Now, everybody knows we are in the midst of a pandemic and it has caused things to kind of flip upside down, turn inside out. And this year, the need is greater than ever, especially for organizations like Vista Maria. Now, this year, in order to maintain client and employee safety, there has been a huge uptick in the need of PPE. So much so that Vista Maria has had to spend over $1 million in PPE that definitely was not budgeted for this year. So with that in mind, if you're feeling generous, they would appreciate any donations to be made to vistamaria.org/donate. Now, without further ado, Katrina, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Megan. How are you?
I am doing fabulous. Thank you for asking. I am so glad you could be with us today, and we can dive into Vista Maria and your digital transformation. So I have a series of questions that I would love for us to walk through. The first of which is, what started Vista Maria down the path of digital transformation?
Well, prior to the pandemic, as an organization, we were being, very slow and thoughtful about our digital transformation. Being an organization that's close to 140 years old, I'm sure everyone can imagine that there's a lot of processes and systems in place that have been there for a long time. Change is scary, change is hard. There's hesitancy about using technology solutions, especially in a business where it's very human touch. Social work is very all about human connection. So um, our workforce has a little bit more hesitancy about relying on technology, but probably about 6 or 7 years ago, when the organization brought on our great leaders like our CEO, Angela Oftenberg, and our CFO, Kathy Regan, who came from a for-profit space to a not-for-profit space, and really started to, educate about some business best practices. Leadership started, asking questions that we couldn't answer because we didn't have the systems to track that sort of information. And so we had really started to kind of peek in and look at, using Microsoft 365 more often, moving from a traditional file share to the cloud. All those kind of things that, a lot of us who work in the for-profit world take for granted that that's just how businesses operate these days. So that's kind of how we got on the path. And then the pandemic really kind of forced us to not be as thoughtful. It forced us to try things. And our new mantra is progress, not perfection, here at Vista Maria. So even if we're, just taking a step into the path, it's better than staying where we are.
Fabulous. So where was Vista Maria when the pandemic started? I know in our conversations we've had, you had been with Vista Maria and then you had made a transition and then you were transitioning back to Vista Maria right as this pandemic started. So where did you guys start in terms of digital transformation, or where were you in your digital transformation journey when this whole pandemic started?
So when it started, you're right. I was coming back after taking a year away from the organization. I had a consulting gig with my best friend that was just a little too hard to pass up, and I left the organization in some good hands. But we were basically really focused on infrastructure prior to the pandemic. We knew that, all of the software solutions, they don't work if your bones are bad. And so we were working on upgrading servers. We had a lot of servers that were on Windows 2008 R2, which of course is at end of life now. And so we were working on some of those infrastructure things so that we could think about, doing some of these bigger digital transformation projects. But we were, starting to fall behind the curve. We were, we have a entry level position on our campus, and so we have a lot of you tend to be younger, college graduates, or perhaps even people kind of exploring what they want to do with their career. And so that workforce was becoming more and more millennial, and they were kind of demanding more. They were expecting their schedules to be online. They were expecting to be able to, communicate with each other. And unfortunately, we just didn't have that in place. And so, we were still working on infrastructure, and we had a lot of ideas for how we could be more digital, but we weren't pulling the trigger on them yet. So that's kind of where we were right at the beginning of the pandemic. I was coming back after being gone for a year. We still had some, critical infrastructure things to worry about, but we knew that our workforce was demanding a higher level of technology.
Okay. Now, how did the pandemic impact your cybersecurity perspective or your stance?
So the pandemic affected so many things, the first thing being that, we needed a collaboration platform. Overnight, our workforce, went to 20%, 20 to 25% employees working remotely. And so, that was a part of it. We immediately launched Teams because I had been using it at my consulting gig, and I thought it would be a really good solution. But we knew that, making, having people work from home and introducing these collaboration platforms and getting into the cloud also comes with the risk of security. And we, knew what we were seeing in the news and from articles from our partners like you, Red Level, that the amount of malicious attacks were increasing exponentially. And so we had gotten a quote from KnowBe4 probably about 3 years prior to the pandemic, and the price of it, just wasn't worth it at the time. But then when the pandemic hit, we said we can't be lax about this, security anymore. This, this hole in our security that is all about what your users do, all about how your users interact with the internet and with their email and with text messages and all of that kind of stuff. So we immediately went back to KnowBe4, negotiated a price, and implemented it. And our baseline fish, showed us that about 40% of our workforce was liable to click on a phishing attempt. And so it really showed us that our investment was worth it. And we've been launching, phishing campaigns and training modules it's been about 6 months now that we've had it in place, and we've seen a lot of awareness. A lot of our employees becoming much more aware, but even with the training and even with increasing that awareness, it's not a foolproof system. And unfortunately, just last month, we had an employee who fell victim to one of these malicious scams and ended up, the bank account was completely drained. And so, we took that and went back to leadership and said, hey, we've got this great tool. We've been, slow launching it. We've seen some good results, but it's, we're still having, employees that are financially impacted. And so now leadership is really wrapping their arms around the problem. They're coming to me asking me for more data, which I can provide because we have KnowBe4. They want to know who's clicking. They want to know how often. They want to know, what sort of messages that they're clicking on. And so we're putting together a 2021 plan right now that's going to include a much higher level of training, much more phishing practice, and also messaging from leadership about how important it is, because I think we all know that it's easy for people to assume that internet security is an IT only function, when really internet security is everybody's job. And that's what KnowBe4 does such a great job of training.
Absolutely, I would agree. We've seen countless times where people are really the weakest link when it comes to your security because they think the link is valid or they think it's coming from their CEO, and they're trying to jump in and help and make sure that they're providing value to whomever that asker might be. And so we've definitely seen a huge increase in cyber crimes and cyber attacks. I know, for instance, a couple of the partner companies that we work with, their hosting provider was just under attack, and it took down their website for over 10 days, during which time they couldn't do anything until they were able to either get the ransomware removed or pay the ransom on their hosting provider. So cybersecurity is a huge issue generally, but this year it has become a laser focus for a lot of organizations. So kudos to Vista Maria for making sure that you're really digging in and getting your employees the education they need so that hopefully they can learn from work, but also carry that into their personal lives. So no more cyber attacks they will have been victimized by. So when we first started talking, you had mentioned kind of getting the house in order to be able to jump into or dive into digital transformation. So what specific things had you guys gone through that you feel helped you be prepared going into the pandemic?
I would definitely say, getting our server, tree structure upgraded. So that happened actually in 2019 when I wasn't with the organization. They upgraded all of our physical servers so that they were, nice new equipment. Then they started upgrading the virtual servers. And so all of our physical servers and virtual servers that were critical were upgraded. Literally, that project ended 2 weeks before the pandemic started.
Ooh,
so
timing is
it was
everything.
pretty good timing. And the next step, on our journey, working with, Red Level as our partner was always to then upgrade our network infrastructure. So as a nonprofit, we get a lot of donations and we try to take advantage of them. And so, but there's pros and cons. You're getting this really nice equipment for either free or a reduced cost, but it's always used. It's always a little bit behind date, and it also means that you end up with an environment that is very mixed. And so we had I think 13 different types of switches in place. We had wireless access points that were over 10 years old and couldn't even broadcast, the modern Wi-Fi. So my iPhone 11 couldn't even connect to Wi-Fi on campus because it was too modern, and it couldn't work. So we knew that that was really our next step, and we were able to, Red Level was able to work with Extreme Networks and get us this phenomenal price. And we, started immediately working on that project. And during the month of August, we replaced all of our switches, all of our wireless access points, and recabled, I think, over 3,000 cables on campus, just to get things to be very uniform. So we have one provider of switches, one provider of wireless access points. Those wireless access points now broadcast modern Wi-Fi signals that any device can pick up. And so that was really the next step in our journey. And that immediately led us into realizing that we didn't have enough bandwidth to support all of our new Teams, video calls and Teams collaboration calls and Zoom calls that are happening with other vendors and, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, because our clients can't visit their families or foster care families and things like that, they're now using Zoom for that. And so we, found as soon as our network equipment got upgraded that we also needed to immediately upgrade our Comcast connections. So we were able to go from 100 megabytes all the way up to a gig, and that has really just been so much of a difference for our users. I have so many users that say, it used to take me 15 minutes just to open my email, and now I can send 10 emails in 15 minutes because things are so much faster. So we've really, laid the groundwork where now we can talk about, okay, our phone system is over 10 years old. How do we get, a new phone system? The next thing we're looking at is user hardware, which has the same problem as our network hardware, where we've taken a lot of donations over the years, and over 60% of our hardware right now, we can't upgrade to Windows 10 because that's how old it is, and it can't have more memory. It can't support Windows 10 and those kind of things. So again, if people are, feeling inspired to donate, that's one of the first things we're trying to do in 2021 is actually find a standard laptop that we can issue to all of our employees that need laptops. So from a support perspective, we only have to know how one machine works. From their perspective, they can move between machines and have the same experience, and we can upgrade to Windows 10, and then we can start looking at modern phone systems. So we're still kind of in that infrastructure phase, but even with the infrastructure changes we've made, it's significantly increased the user experience on Teams and Zoom and other applications while we're kind of waiting to do that next level of infrastructure upgrade.
Okay. So you talked about a lot of what has transitioned and how you guys have shifted throughout the pandemic. And there has been obviously quite a bit of change. Now, from a technology perspective and a communications perspective, where is Vista Maria sitting right now?
Right now, some of the biggest things that have changed and that we're really getting used to, we're trying to make, less touch points. So, we're a gated community. And so everyone that comes onto our campus goes through a front gate. And before the pandemic, it was a very, touch process. You would come, you would talk to the guard, you would have to either fill out paperwork, or there would be interactions and exchanges of information with driver's licenses and things like that. We were able to upgrade to a new version of our visitor management system. And now it's almost completely touchless. Our visitors get a QR code that they can scan when they come onto campus, and it'll check them in. So there's a lot less risk at the front gate, and we're trying to do that everywhere. And so one of the things that we have found to be most successful and has been super fun is deploying as many QR codes as possible. I know everyone's using them at restaurants and things right now too. You can really use them for anything. And so we actually created a QR code that launches a help desk ticket. And we've seen a 30% increase in the amount of help desk tickets that are submitted now that it is so easy to submit one. People just scan the QR code, it opens up a template, they submit it, and we get it. So we're finding out about a lot more problems on campus. People are having a much better experience interacting with the help desk. And we're now that everyone kind of knows how these QR codes work, we're also launching them for things like employee recognition. There's a QR code you can scan and write a little recognition, and that employee will get considered for Employee of the Month. So that's been pretty fun. Another thing that, we're really starting to focus on a lot more, which has always been an important priority, but now in the pandemic, there's so many more reasons for it, is just data analysis. We have to do a lot of data analysis for contact tracing and for hazard pay and for, all these things that are related to the pandemic. But because there's an increase of data requests, now leadership is wanting to have a much better understanding of what does our data world look like? What data marts do we have? What reports do we have? Which are manual, which are automatic? And so that's really been the focus in this quarter, is getting a lot of that information and making some long-term decisions. Teams, has, overnight become the most important thing in many people's lives, where everyone is, talking on Teams meetings now. Everyone loves to share video, which I'm not a big fan of, but if everyone loves it, everyone loves it. And so also, taking advantage of all those plugins to Teams. I have become an avid user of Planner and being able to build Kanban boards and be able to show people exactly, where things are at. We've also launched Textedly at the recommendation of Red Level, which is a mass texting software. So we're uploading our employees' cell phone numbers, and then we're sending out critical messages. So this has been really helpful during the pandemic, where probably about 40% of our workforce just doesn't have access to a computer when they're doing their job. They're direct caring for our clients. They are, they're helping them with schoolwork. They're administering medication. They're helping them if they're in quarantine because they're sick. Their primary focus is not getting on a computer and checking their email. So, but what that leads to is our employees were very frustrated because a lot of important COVID information was being delivered via email, but they weren't getting it because they don't check their email and they don't have time to check their email. And that's fine, because we would rather have them caring for our clients. That's their primary job. But we also need to get them important information. And so we launched Textedly, and our employees have been very receptive to it. So we can, deliver that critical messaging to all 300 of our employees in a single text message. And now we can start to monitor responses to those text messages. And of course, employees have the option to opt out. That's, with any, mass communication tool. But we've done 3 messages now, and only 5 people have chosen to opt out. And we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback on that. So I would say we're really a much more, for already being a very collaborative agency, being a social work and nonprofit, that level of collaboration is just higher and much more instantaneous now with things like Teams and Textedly.
Okay, I know there was one other program that we had discussed, especially in the world where everything is digital, everything is a video conference call or a conference call. I know you and I have both been enjoying Doodly. So share a quick story about how you've been able to use a little bit of Doodly to bring some life to your meetings.
Yeah, so I haven't even had a chance to use it yet. I've only previewed it to people, but yeah, we were looking for something that was a tool to communicate how complex our world is to our leadership team, because they're doing their job, and they don't have time to know about the 400 computers we support and 50 switches and 40 it's a very complex IT world. And so, in order to try and help them kind of understand how things are interrelated, me and Ed, my account manager at Red Level, we were trying to think of a way, like, how can we quickly communicate something? And we have all, we'd all seen those whiteboard illustrations that are fun little videos that like explain a concept in 5 minutes, and they're kind of like mind blowing. And Doodly allows you to create those videos in a drag and drop fashion. And so, like, I totally geeked out and spent 4 hours and made a 5-minute video that compares our IT infrastructure to a house, and what's your ground floor and what's your middle floor, and if these things are not working, your whole house collapses. And I previewed it with a couple of our leadership members, and they said they want all of my communication to be in this format. So it's pretty fun, and I definitely recommend it for anyone who's looking for a way to just very easily communicate important points.
Absolutely. So now, what is Vista Maria looking to do in 2021 and even going further forward? What does the future look like?
So from an agency perspective, there's a lot of reinvention going on. This pandemic, along with changes in social justice and the human and health services industry, have really caused us to pause and look at our care models and things like that. So we are, going through a little bit of a reinvention. We're launching a new branding look, which is really taking on our story of being a fearless leader in this realm. Our foundress, Sister Mary Euphrasia, she led with a courageous heart, and so that's what we're doing. We're definitely wanting to heal people from their trauma, and so from an IT perspective, what we're doing is, I already mentioned, the user hardware remediation is our first thing that we're looking at in 2021. The other thing is our phone system. So right now we're using a very old Cisco system, and a lot of the hardware isn't even available to purchase anymore. So we're looking to hopefully move to a cloud-based system that can get rid of a lot of handsets, move to headsets where we can. So that's another thing on the docket for 2021. Our increased know before, getting official training modules that people will step through, doing a lot more communication there. And then we are also looking at evaluating replacing our client relationship module software, because we really want to focus on outcomes and tracking outcomes and making sure that each of our clients is on a care path that's going to lead them to success. And so we want a system where we're going to be able to easily input data, pull data out of it, do predictive modeling, really setting ourselves up for that. Now, of course, all of that's not going to happen next year, but a lot of it is going to go, start to be evaluated and really start to understand. And, as we move through the pandemic, we just seem to learn, new lessons every day. And so we've been very good at switching gears very quickly, which I think we've always been very good at as an organization. It's just part of our DNA. But I think now there's no sadness about leaving something on the table. I think, in the world before the pandemic, and I don't think this is just, for Vista Maria, you got very attached to things, and you wanted to hold on to them and see them through to fruition. And now I think there's a big shift in mindset that that, okay, we tried this and it's not working, it's time to move on to something different. And so that's a really refreshing attitude, I think, especially for technology folks who know that technology changes way faster than, than needs do, and needs change faster than technology can keep up. And it's really good to have that, fluid mindset about it.
Absolutely. Well, we have time for some questions now, and we have had quite a few come in. So let's get started with those. First up is, now that much of your equipment has been standardized, as an organization that depends on donations, what is your plan to keep it that way moving forward?
That's a good question. Definitely when it comes to that network hardware, we don't have to worry about it for a few years. And we did purchase enough that we have a couple backups in case there were some, catastrophic problems. So from that perspective, it's something that we don't have to think about for a couple years. From the user hardware perspective, that's a very interesting challenge that we're still trying to figure out, because we definitely don't want to say no to people, but I think we have to learn how to ask for different things, perhaps be more specific, or perhaps, turn away physical donations in favor of monetary donations when it comes to technology, so that we can determine the proper way to spend the money and make sure that we're not ending up with an environment that's too complex. So I will say that it's definitely on our mind, and we know that we need to think about it, but because we haven't had to consider it yet, we haven't developed like a full model to make sure that that happens.
Okay. Next question is, why did you choose KnowBe4?
Okay. So KnowBe4 is really the leader in internet security awareness. And so we didn't even look at anywhere else, to be honest, because I haven't heard of other platforms quite like KnowBe4. And the thing that's really nice about KnowBe4 that we've taken advantage of is it's not just a platform for learning about internet security awareness. You can use it as a learning management system for your own modules. So you have the ability to upload custom modules and deliver them and track, who's taking that training. So we actually liked that dual purpose of it as well, that it wasn't a one-trick pony. And so we've used it to deliver training on how to use Kronos time and attendance system, how to use our visitor management system. We're talking about loading even more in there, because it's a very easy system to use. It's a one-click, take your training. It's a few minutes long, and we've had really good success with our building a human firewall campaign. We've had over 80% of employees complete that program on time. That is the highest percentage we've ever seen of employees completing a training module. When we launched our Kronos learning modules, 90% of people completed it within the first 3 days, because it's an easy system to use. The other thing we really liked about KnowBe4 is the support team. You get a dedicated service support account manager for support. And when we had the incident, that unfortunate incident I talked about earlier, I reached out to my account manager and I said, what can my CEO send to employees that would help them understand how important this is? And she, within minutes, came back with 7 resources, 5 PDFs, 2 training modules, and also messaging that the CEO could include in her email to employees. So even though we didn't, consider other platforms, this one really stands out, in the industry as a whole.
Absolutely. Next question that came up is around user adoption. So with all these new tools, how have you been able to get your users to adopt the new technologies and the new tools?
So with Teams, unfortunately, it was a throw you into the fire and kind of like figure it out, because it had to happen, so quickly. But how we've, supported those people that were kind of thrown into the fire, first, they came and said, yes, we like it. We just need to know more about it now. And so we have, first we were having a weekly lunch and learn that people were attending just to learn tips and tricks about how to use Teams. We've moved that to a monthly because so many people are using it successfully and there's not as many questions rolling into us about how to use it. And so at that monthly lunch and learn, we just kind of go over, what's different in Teams this month. Now, we haven't even officially rolled out Teams as our agency collaboration platform. It was thrown out there for people, to work from home and be able to collaborate. Now people love it and there's a ton of people using it, but it's not even official. We've never gone through and looked at all the settings to make sure they're everything we want. Now, Teams is pretty standard out of the box, so I don't think we're missing a lot or that there's any holes because Microsoft just, does a pretty good job of getting things out of the box to be really good. For other systems, like changing our visitor management system, we actually chose to change it during a time when only essential workers were on campus and there were no visits allowed on campus. So it was very easy to change our visitor management system at that time. And Know Before really helped us with that launch because we delivered a 3-minute learning module about how to use that system to all employees. And again, about 60 to 70% of them completed that module in the first day or so. And so that really helped us there. So really, it's just about communication. And, before we used to be very strict about everyone needs to be trained before a system launches and we need everyone's feedback and we need this. And now it's that progress over perfection. Launch the system, train key individuals, let them start to love it, then launch it to more people, then launch it to more people. So we're just doing things a little differently, where before we tried to do everything up front and then launch. Now let's launch and just keep iterating.
I love that. That is a great perspective, especially now. Everything's changing and we're constantly having to pivot. So I love that perspective. Question came in on the QR codes that you were using. Now, was this tied to a specific software that you're using? What was that software and how did you launch that program?
So the QR codes, literally, I just did a Google search, create QR codes, and I ended up using flowcode.com because it was a free software and you have basically unlimited QR codes that you can create. And it even tracks, how many times your QR code is getting clicked. So that was a random Google search. So flowcode.com is what we're using. And then how we're actually distributing them is I have a little template. It's just a publisher file that has the QR code and an explanation. It has like an eye-catching title that says, want to reward your employee or, are you having a technology issue? So it kind of grabs their attention that way. And then it says, yep, just scan this QR code and, and submit this email and then you'll be taken care of. So that's how we're doing it right now. And then at our at the visitor gate, we actually have a QR code loaded on the iPad as an image. So when someone comes up to the gate, the guard just has to flip their iPad, show that QR code, and the person can scan it.
Wow, I kind of love that. Well, again, I would like to say thank you, Katrina, for your time. It has been wonderful as always. I want to let everybody know about our next Modern Workplace webinar. We will be with the Detroit Institute of Arts. Join us January 19th at 12:30 p.m. You can go ahead and register for that webinar at redlevelgroup.com/Modern Workplace Webinars. Once again, thank you so much, Katrina. It has been lovely and wonderful, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.